Okay, we are back now, Bay Sunday. She is an author, she's an editor, and a musician. She's also the creative director of Praising Pilgrim's Music, a growing publishing company of music. It's based right here in San Francisco, and here to give us the inside look at the competitive world of music, and the author of The Freedom Guide for Music Creators, Miss DeeAnn D. Matthews. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning, Frank.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Doing okay. Well, let's talk about your background. What is your background? You're a teacher, you're an author, you're a musician.
I've done more stuff in 31 years than, okay, so my large background is a musician. Started taking piano 20 years ago, been composing about that long. I went ahead and got a teacher's credential, so I went through that, then all this great layoff stuff started happening, but I still tutor. I also teach piano. I do consulting around copyright issues, and I have a lawyer to refer people to when they get above my ability to share with them. But there's a lot. I tell people the 9 lives of DeeAnn Matthews, so I'm kind of running around.
You're a Renaissance woman, so to speak.
Bingo. The Jacqueline of all trades.
Well, you wrote this book, The Freedom Guide for Music Creators, and it's kind of like a roadmap to kind of navigate this crazy world of music. How did that come about?
Well, that came about as I was moving forward in the industry. Several things happened. As I began to go to conferences, I went to the ASCAP conference in Los Angeles and met a lot of musicians for the first time from different areas, and they were all telling the same kinds of stories. One woman, her music had been stolen from her, and she's just crying because someone had taken her conscious song about loving yourself and being good to yourself. Someone had stolen it and made it into vanilla chocolate, rub it all over my body. So that alerted me something was very wrong. On another trip to Los Angeles, my cousin, who was either 17 or 19 at the time, his studio had stolen all his songs. So I'm hearing all these stories. I was a professional journalist in the A&G newspaper group, so I knew that I had the kind of writing skills that would allow me to research and take my own experiences and make a difference. So between hearing all these stories of musicians and just having those writing research skills and being in the industry, I kind of put my own stuff on hold for a minute because I got tired of hearing these stories. Somebody has got to do something. So that's how the genesis of the book began.
Can you take us from point A to point B? I write a song. I write the lyrics, I write the music.
Okay.
I want to publish it. I go to a publisher and say, geez, this is a great song. What happens? And how much money gets kicked back to me as not only the composer, but the lyricist, the whole shebang? If any, in some cases, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on exactly how you follow this process. My book is self-published for a reason. I just couldn't be bothered. When you begin this process, the first thing that you should do is make sure that you register your own copyright so that you're listed as the owner. Now, you can transfer this to a publisher later if you want to, but for this, most deals are about 50-50. So 50% of what comes in would go to the publisher and 50% would go to you. You could also do what's called a co-publishing deal, in which case you would get 75% and have to do a little bit more work. You could take an administrative publishing deal where you did almost all the work and it would be something like 80-20 or 90-10. But if you're going to go that far, you should just self-publish it and go from there. Now, publishers do have some good things that they do. It used to be, when you had sheet music, they used to shop your things to record companies also. But today, with the social media, Miss Karen White was on previously.
There you go, and you were clapping for her, saying, "You go, girl."
Because with social media, you can do a lot of the work. Publish just means make public.
Bieber, well, he threw a few things on YouTube. His dad did, more on a lark so family could see it.
Right.
And guess what?
Well, even Annie DeFranco, when she started out, she sold a lot of things out of the back of her car. Publish just means make public. You yourself could do this. Of course, now being on Channel 5 helps, but you yourself could do this just as readily. And any musician who's just starting out, if they take the time to learn how, could do this just as readily as anyone else.
Well, you see that on YouTube. I mentioned Justin Bieber, but a lot of bands, will throw up a link. And we do that in the broadcasting industry now. You've got a resume tape, that's our calling card to get a job. You can throw it up on YouTube, you can get a link to a website, that kind of thing. And 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that just wasn't there.
Right.
So it's getting easier, but you still have a lot of bumps in the road, right?
Well, of course, because when you do it yourself, there's this tremendous learning curve. If you're someone who's starting out, like I consult with a lot of older musicians who are they dealt with life, and now they have a moment. If you still are dealing with life, finding an honest publisher is not a bad thing to do, because the administrative work is a lot of work. But if you are a little bit younger and you can make some decisions about how you want to spend your time, it may be worth you doing it yourself. I'm not saying all publishers are bad. I said find an honest one.
We had Lenny Williams on the show last week from Tower of Power, and he's got a new single out and is enjoying a bit of a renaissance later in life, in his mid to late 60s now. And he said he's just mind-boggled because, you know, years ago, you got an album, you got a record company, you put out your album, and that's how you pushed your wares. But it's amazing how you can get your music out these days.
Just make sure you register your copyright first. One of the most astonishing statistics, when Michael Jackson died, the news went around the world in 7 seconds. So if you write that hit song and throw it up on YouTube, yeah, it can be around the world in 7 seconds. But if you can't prove who wrote that, and you don't have something you can take to every court that subscribes, that has treaties with the United States, then someone else can steal your song in, you know, Sweden or Russia or Argentina, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And does your book kind of help these people? What exactly does it do?
It walks you through
the process.
The processes of how to do this. You'll find the addresses to the email address and also the physical address to the Copyright Office, and tells you what to do step by step. There's also in Appendix B the address of every Copyright Office in the world. So no matter where you live, we can help you get your stuff registered there. If you can do this just by looking at the information in the book.
My wife's a music teacher, and I often wonder, because she buys a lot of music. We'll go down to the San Francisco Music Center and pick up West Side Story. We talked about this off camera. Leonard Bernstein wrote it. Does he still get paid for it, for every copy that comes out, or how does that work?
He doesn't, but his estate, well, his publisher still makes some money from it. His estate still makes some money. The money tends to go to the publisher, and they distribute it to the copyright holders. That's one of their administrative functions. So yes, in theory, your copyright lasts, due to the most recent changes in the law, for 70 years after your death. So if you were to go write a song today, basically your great-grandchild would still be, well, I don't know, but I'm going to come back to that. Your great-grandchild will still be getting some royalties from this, because we're going to say you're going to live another 50, 60 years.
God bless you.
And then you got to add 70 more. So that's 130 years. Yeah. Now, if you've never written a song, well, okay, Elvis wrote Love Me Tender, Love Me True, but the tune was a folk song called Orally. So if you can just find something that was written before 1923, that is what's called public domain music. And anything written before 1923 in the U.S. is considered public domain. All you need to do is change that 20%, and it becomes a new copyright. You register it, and for 130 years from today, you could be generating, you and your publisher and your record company will be generating some money, as long as that's in print and making money.
Let's talk about the origin of music a little bit.
Okay.
In the African-American community, because you got jazz, you've got blues, even rock and roll, you got hip-hop, the whole shebang, rap. And a lot of that is coming from the slave days and from Africa as well. And I've heard you speak before on YouTube, and you talked about the African-American community, everybody really, but they're not getting what they deserve over all those years.
As I say, a lot of the music that you find today in pop has a very deep root in West Africa, because that's where my ancestors were from. I actually know Kwaku Dadi teaches drumming at City College of San Francisco, and his family has been African drumming for what must be 28 generations at this point. So that music has a long reach, and when it came here with my ancestors, you know, obviously it met with European forms of music for the first time, and that meeting is this Negro spiritual. And from the Negro spiritual, you get all these different things, blues and jazz and all the way down. Although, if you've noticed, a lot of that money has not gone back into the community which created it. Same thing happened if you were Irish or Italian, for example. You come here, and this music mixes up with all the other things.
You mentioned sharecropping.
Yes. I'm trying to make a really short
We got
condensation.
a minute left. So
a minute. When you sharecropped after slavery, many former slaves could not find work, so they had to go back and work for their farmer masters. Their farmer master said, "Great, we'll loan you all your equipment, all your seed, all your crops, and we'll pay you at the end." But if you couldn't read the contract. Even if you could, you didn't have the right. So at the end, your farmer master said, at the end of the year, "Oh, you almost made it, but don't worry. You can go in debt to me next year and loan more seed and more, and you could do this for 100 years. Sharecropping persisted 100 years after slavery. In the music industry, if you don't put an audit clause in your contract, they loan you the studio time. They loan you the extra musicians. And at the end of your term, they're like, you almost made it. We'll take it out of the next album.
10 seconds, advice, musicians out there, old or new, what do they need to know? Don't
be an April Fool. Learn how to handle your music business, and my book is a good place to start.
Do your homework. All right. What a pleasure.
Thank you, Frank.
So nice
I
to
appreciate
meet you.
it.
To get a copy of Freedom Guide for music creators, go in person to Marcus Bookstores or online to marcusbooks.com. It's right here in San Francisco. That's our show. We'll see you again next week with another edition of Bass Sunday. Have a good week, everybody.